It's hard to believe I've been gone since November, and I never even told you guys that I was stepping away, and that's on me. I apologize. But it's not because I ran out of stories. In fact, I've got 2 in a hopper that I could put out right now. I disappeared because the last investigation that I did, paranormal investigation, it was with the Hinsdale house and the Wildwood Sanitarium. I put it out in October, and in fact, Halloween night. I kind of hit a wall. Now, by that, probably not what you would think. I mean, most paranormal devices that we took, even the most popular ones that's on the market right now, they can prove a lot of things to a lot of people, at least in their opinions. I mean, these devices, they can react, they can spike, they can beep, but proving abnormal in a way that you could look your best friend, a skeptical best friend of yours, and with a straight face say, I've totally got something provable. It's a completely different game. So tonight I'm going to go over 3 things. First, I'm going to tell you exactly why I stepped away. Second, I'm going to break down some of the gear that I took and why some of them don't necessarily pass the sniff test. And third, I'm going to share what I'm building above and beyond this channel. Retraced Echoes is going nowhere. In fact, it's adapting a little bit. But there's a whole lot more that we're going to be going over. So let's retrace the echoes, if you dare. Well, as I mentioned, I've not been on here since November. I didn't announce where I was going or why I was leaving or any of that information. I just kind of went quiet. And it wasn't because the government came and got me and I'm not in witness protection now. My house didn't become possessed. There was nothing crazy that happened. In fact, it's something a lot simpler than that. You know, when we started looking through the footage, when we did that investigation at the Wildwood Sanitarium and the Hinsdale house, I started noticing things that I couldn't unsee. It sounds way juicier than what it really is. A lot of the tools that we used, the same tools that's right behind me, I found out they don't really detect a whole lot. And when they do go off, you can't even prove why. I mean, we had a dead bell, a REM pod, an advanced EMF detection device. Everyone loves this one. We had some cat balls, IR cameras, cassette players, you name it. We pretty much had it. Thermal cameras. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And to be fair, we did the right thing. In the moment, whenever something would go off, we never used that as a, hey, that's evidence of paranormal. It wasn't until there was multiple devices that would go off at the same time that we would kind of say, okay, maybe there's something to that. But even with that, it's not even a guarantee, because if several devices can be triggered at the same exact time, you kind of get that stacked false positive, so to speak. So it became very noticeable to me that when it comes to paranormal research, you can have all the tools, you can spend all the money, and it doesn't really matter because it's only as smart as the device that you have. Now, the investigation, it wasn't the end. For us, it was, quite honestly, the beginning. I mean, I spent about a month and a half reviewing every single camera when we went, every single audio track, every moment we thought was huge. When we edited it into the episodes, I was kind of like, man, this is the best of the best, but there's thousands of things that I couldn't even add. Some of them could have been paranormal. Some of them probably wasn't paranormal that I put in there. I mean, for goodness sakes, when you first watch the episode, there's this slam that scares me to death. I wasn't expecting it. Was that paranormal? Well, maybe not. I don't know. But I can tell you this much. During the review, I saw 2 different categories of things. Things that would actually hold up, right? Like that shadow figure that was in Tommy's room at the Wildwood Sanitarium. I don't care what anyone tells me. That was a shadow that we could only pick up on IR. We had another camera that you don't see the shadow at all. We didn't see it with our naked eyes. There was nothing that could possibly cause that shadow. What could it be? But in addition to that, there was also things that I absolutely knew could not hold up to scrutiny. And that's why I left. I didn't want to keep doing investigations where our best explanation was, well, something happened, trust me, bro, because I feel like there's enough of that in paranormal as it is. I wanted a way to document what's changed, when it changed, and what else changed with it. I mean, heck, when Nick and I was looking at investigation gear when we went to the Wildwood Sanitarium in the Hinsdale house, there was certain things that I was looking for that just wasn't on the market, or if it was on the market, it did a few things and it was $600. Who has that kind of money? So I kind of stepped back to build towards validation, not just a reaction. Now, I want to explain why the gear that most people use struggles to prove anything, even when they use it completely honestly. Now, let's start with the stuff that I used at the Hinsdale house and the Wildwood. You saw it in my videos. I mean, when you watch the videos of what we used, that was the best of the best that equipment could give us. And I'm going to say this very carefully because I don't want it to be misunderstood. I'm not here to trash anybody's setup. I mean, I'm using the same stuff that most of you are. A lot of these devices, they're not built to prove, or should I say they're not built to prove that anything is paranormal. I mean, they're built to alert you that something changed. That's not useless. It's just a different job than what most people think that they're doing. Now, on the investigation, we used an advanced EMF detector. We thought that it was amazing, and on paper, it sounds like the perfect tool. It can pick up changes in electrical magnetic fields, but you see, here's the issue. EMF doesn't come with a label that says, that's paranormal. EMF can come from wires inside of walls. It can come from power cycles, appliance cycling, radios, nearby electronic devices, and yes, even cell phones. So when it spikes, what did it prove? Well, it proved the meter changed. It detects something with an electrical magnetic field, but that's it. Now, if you're honest, EMF is just the starting point. There's a whole lot of other devices that have way more problems, but one thing with EMF, and I can't remember who told me, it may have been Hyatt Riot on Deceptive Reality, but somebody told me, hey, do a baseline when you walk around the location so that way you know, hey, this is where this was at. But again, when you do a baseline, who's to say things won't change in the course of a half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour later? But I agree there needs to be a baseline that you can cross-check with in the future so that way you have a verdict. The next thing we used was a REM pod. It's literally right behind me. It's right down there for those of you watching on YouTube. Now, I actually like the REM pod, and I like it for one reason. They're a great, hey, something happened right here moment. In the video for the Hinsdale house in the Wildwood, you saw a video where Paul Kenyon walked by. The REM pod had been sitting there the entire time, never went off once. You guys didn't see that in the video, but it was there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, never went off. Paul Kenyon happened to walk by, which we had walked by 20 times, 25 times, never went off once. When he walked by, it went absolutely ballistic. Something happened in that moment. I don't know what happened. He started yelling at whatever it was, and that thing went off. We're talking the highest possible bleep bloops. The lights were all flashing, every single one of them. But again, the REM pod, it's not an identity tool. To me, a trigger is not an explanation. A REM pod can react to interference, right? Environmental changes. It can react to static. In some occasions, movement nearby, even factors that we don't notice in the moment because, well, heck, we're just focused on the room and the vibe of what's happening inside the room. We're looking for a pattern, right? We're in a haunted house. we're going to see this thing go off and go, this because it's haunted. And that's not always the case. So when it goes off, we have to ask the question that we really want to: why did it go off? Mine detects temperature. I didn't know if it was temperature causing it to go off. I didn't know if it was tripping due to environmental factors. You just don't know. The dead bell. I love the dead bell. Let me clarify something, because a lot of people, when they hear dead bell, there's two different versions. There's one that is simply motion, and then there's one like mine, which is the Brick House Inn, that uses EMF detection also, similar to like the REM pod. So it's not ringing because someone physically bumped it or something like that. It rings because the device sensed a change in the electrical magnetic field. Now, we had the EMF detector, and we did notice when the EMF detector went off, it wasn't uncommon for, you guessed it, the bell to go off. Now, something that was interesting is when the EMF detector would go off, but the bell wouldn't. And they weren't that far apart, which means there had to be, in my opinion, there had to be something that was moving within certain proximities that would cause different things to go off. But again, a bell ringing in your brain, it's a physical thing. It's not like the REM pod that's all electronic, right? It's a bell dinging. And it feels like, if anything, a direct interaction, but it's still at the core of it just an EMF meter. It detects a change, not the cause of the change. Now, that change again could be from walls, the wires in the walls, or, it could be a case where, for whatever reason, there's interference even in your own gear. Maybe a phone was getting a ping, a radio signal, a power cycle, anything environmental that's in the moment that you can't see. You don't know what causes any of this. I treated it like an alarm saying, hey, something's here right now. But again, I was in a haunted location. That's the assumption. I could probably turn it on right here, right now, and that bell will go off eventually. Does that mean there's a ghost in my house? No, it's not what that means at all. Then there's the controversial one, the cat balls. Now, cat balls is probably one of the most common tools for a reason. They're cheap, they're visual, they're relatively easy to understand. They're also extremely sensitive to the environment. I didn't know that. Temperature changes, pressure, vibrations, surface movement, all that can make it light up. The flashlights, the mag lights. I think it's the mag lights. You're probably going to correct me in the comments down below. You flip them to where, you unscrew the end of it to where it's just barely on, and then the heat transfer will cause it to go off. Some people will say that's bogus. It's not legit. It's not real. Well, the same thing can be said about cat balls to a degree. But again, when I would see a cat ball go off, my EMF would spike. The dead bell would go off. I'd go, oh, okay, well, there's something to that. So this is how I look at cat bells from that investigation. They're almost like a tripwire, not a witness. If they go off, it's a prompt to check everything else that was going on. It by itself is not a conclusion. And probably the best, and the thing that I'm the most thankful for in the investigation that we had, the IR cameras. The IR cameras for me are a must, because they're at least recording what is happening in the moment. But IRs are not perfect. They can pick up reflections and dust and bugs and lens flares and shoot light bleeds. And then they've got this compression from artifacting. The camera can see something that looks wild, but it's just some completely normal. So the camera is important, but you have to treat it like documentation, not interpretation. The uncomfortable truth, and here's the part that I want you to remember, most paranormal gear is one single sensor. It reacts to one category of change, one thing that's happening in the moment. That's why you have to use multiple devices to make it worthwhile. Here's the thing. If you don't have a baseline data and you don't cross-check it, none of it matters anyway. That's why we used what a lot of paranormal investigation teams did. When multiple devices would go off, we would treat that like a hey, maybe we want to look at everything else. But even that's not foolproof, because if several devices can react to the same exact normal triggers, well, then it's one of those moments where it might be 3 devices going on. Let's use as an example, the EMF and the dead bell. They kind of do the same thing. They're in different places, but who's to say there wasn't some type of a power surge that caused them to both go off at the same time? And maybe coincidentally, when that happened, the cat ball happened to go off, because maybe there's a static electricity that causes it. That's why a lot of times these devices was screaming a why, not that something happened. Which brings me to the moment in our investigation that kind of made all of this click for me. Now, for those of you that's been on an investigation, I'm pretty sure you're already going to know what I'm going to say. There's going to be a moment in an investigation where there's more than just you, and you both lock into the same moment. You're in the same moment. You feel like you know what's going on. Both of your eyes are in the same spot, or at least you're both acknowledging the same area. And for 1 second, you think to yourself, this is the moment that we've been waiting for. This is the clip that we all cannot wait to put on YouTube. And in that moment, everyone has some sort of a reaction. We all had alerts. We had some kind of a thing happening that was to us paranormal because the devices are going off. Everything lines up in a perfect stack. But later in the review, it didn't. At least not cleanly. I mean, sure, one device is going off, another one's being quiet, or the EMF-based stuff is all reacting at the same time, but nothing else is supporting it, or something looks huge, but when you look at it on the IR cameras, you're like, man, that doesn't make sense at all. There's a moment when, for me, I'm in the Hinsdale house. Jess is beside me. I'm hearing footsteps above me. Jess is also hearing the same footsteps. We're acknowledging what's happening. I was so excited because I said, I'm going to go to that camera upstairs that has the mic. We're going to have the footsteps upstairs. Maybe we'll see something. I go to look at the footage. Nothing. So what did I prove? I proved that there was footsteps possibly on the ceiling of the room we were in. There was no EMF spike. There was no devices going off. There was nothing. And that's the part that bothered me. What bothered me is I couldn't defend what I was going to say about those footsteps or other. That's just one example. I couldn't look at anything and say, here's the change. Here's the baseline. Here's the cross check. I couldn't say this is why this is abnormal. All I had was, well, we heard footsteps, or in other cases, hey, this device went off. Now think about if you're a family and you're dealing with a haunting. You don't have any equipment. You're going through the same things, and now it becomes scary because you can't justify the reasons of what's happening. That's when I started questioning everything in my head and what I needed to do and how I was going to try to advance what we do on Retraced Echoes and Deceptive Reality and some other things I'm going to be covering here in a few minutes. What I wanted to do is build something to where it would hold up in the editing room, not just in the heat of the moment. Not to convince everybody on Earth, but to at least validate some sort of a claim. It was something to create a trail that even a skeptic would have to sit with and go, yeah, I can't explain that. It doesn't make sense. That question is what pulled me away. And it's what's basically starting this whole new direction that I'm about to take. So here's the direction that I'm going. And this is going to be the heart of everything. If something abnormal is truly happening, it usually leaves more than just one trace. Some of the best footage that we caught from the Hinsdale house in the Wildwood Sanitarium was not because one device went off. It was typically multiple devices that weren't connected to each other that I could point to and go, hey, that's kind of cool. And I acknowledged something. Now, not every time, and it's never always in a perfect way, but it's enough that there's a pattern that you can show and say, hey, look at this, Mr. Skeptic. And that's the shift for me. You see, for me, what I wanted to do, and for those of you that don't know, I have a background in computer science and technology. That's kind of what I've done above and beyond just what you know from a podcast or from my day job. So here's the direction that I'm going. And this is pretty much at the heart of everything. If something abnormal is truly happening in these paranormal investigations, it usually leaves more than one telltale sign, more than one footstep, so to speak. I mean, not every time, and it's not always perfect, but there's, if anything, enough of a pattern to where you can go, that was abnormal. Some would say paranormal, and here's why. And that for me was the shift. Instead of relying on just one tool like we did in the investigation, I kind of wanted to focus on building something that was like a clear picture for me. More context, more consistency, fewer assumptions. Because listen, when I came back for that investigation, I was talking to people. Everyone's like, oh yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, your electrical magnetic field detection device climbed a little bit. Like, shoot, there was people that saw the full-on shadow and they was like, it's just probably a shadow for something. And I was like, no, we tested. We skeptically tried to disprove this and we couldn't. Here's all the footage from that. And they're like, it's just a shadow. Some people you'll never be able to get them to come to the other side. And that's totally fine. I understand. But to everybody else, anyone that doesn't know, my background's computer science and technology. That's what I do on the side. That's what I've done since I've been younger. I learned how to program. A long time ago, I was building little devices from little toys and different things that I would piece together. So for me, what I wanted to do was create something that the next investigation that we would go on, we would have more than a, hey, this EMF jumped up, or hey, this device is lighting and blinking, and then Nick's not yelling over at me, hey, what's causing this to go off? And I go, I don't know, but something's happening. For me, I wanted something that if there was multiple things that was overlapping, if it was repeatable, that maybe there's something abnormal. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of what I'm doing. Not yet. If anything, I want to test it, put it out on field tests. I've got some people that's already going to be field testing. I want to make sure that it's solid before I start divulging any of the details. But the mindset is this. I want to have less, hey, did you hear that? Or, hey, did you see that? And more of what changed? When did it change? And does it line up with anything else? And for the families that are dealing with stuff like that matters, well, you got to understand, if a family's dealing with a haunting day in, day out, you got to remember fear, it grows into the unknown. I want to bring for them maybe a little bit of clarity, because let's be honest, if for a family that's dealing with a haunting, if you can just disprove a paranormal event at all, maybe you can say, hey, here's why this thing is happening. That to them, it'll allow them to finally be able to breathe again. So let's talk about what's changing and what's not changing. Retraced Echoes, what's still here? Wherever you're listening to this podcast or wherever you're watching this podcast, it's going to be exactly the same. In fact, on some of the platforms where I've been audio only, we might be going to video going forward. We're still going to be covering the hauntings, the encounters, the UFO, the cryptid stories, all the things that kind of make you lean back and go, wait, what? But in addition to that, we're going to be bringing in a brand new channel called Ghost Track that'll only be on YouTube. It's going to be a place where you can actually see the investigation side of all of this, the process, the validation, the attempts to try to figure out if something's paranormal, if it's not, and kind of see how a case will play out over time. And these two, they're going to interconnect. Now, as Ghost Track starts working with people, we're going to tell a version of the stories right here on Retraced Echoes. Fresh stories, untold stories, stories that nobody's heard before. We're talking about real experiences told the same way that we've told every other story here. But the difference is, if you want to go a little bit deeper, you want to see the actual footage of what's happening. You want to see what we tried. You want to see what holds up in the investigation, what didn't. You want to follow that case as it unfolds. That's where Ghost Track comes in. So Retraced Echoes is still the storytelling background home that you've grown and love. Ghost Track becomes the come with us side. Now, I want to say this part very carefully. We're going to screen cases. We're going to do all the interviews. We're going to try to filter out obvious problems before we even step into that situation. And I'm doing that for one reason. I want to be respectful of people's lives. And I want whatever we do share to be handled responsibly. So if you're here for the stories, nothing will change. You're still going to get them. If you want the deeper layer, the investigations, the processing, the follow through, then Ghost Track, that'll be right next door. And that's the direction that we're headed. Now I want to talk about Ghost Track a little bit. Ghost Track's going to be a place to basically help families. And maybe you're one of those families or an individual that's dealing with a haunting right there in their home that you cannot explain. You want to have it handled respectfully. I'm not the kind of paranormal investigator that's going to come in and try to rile things up. I don't care about this side of it from a standpoint of I got to make a good episode. Listen, I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to validate a haunting. And as I said, we're going to be using equipment that I've built. It's going to be one of those pieces of equipment that's never been seen before, extremely scientific. I'm going to be able to key in on things that nobody else is able to key in on. Not yet. And I'll explain that a little bit later also. But when you send that information into us, we're going to say, hey, what's happening inside the house? Is it tied to a specific room? Is it a certain time of day? Is there something that has to happen that causes these things to occur? We're going to see if you've checked out things like wiring inside the home, drafts or animals, or is it maybe a neighbor, maybe some construction that's going on, anything that could line up with something explainable. And hey, who knows, if your case ends up being one that we take on, here's the promise that I'll make you. We'll never reveal your real name. We won't reveal the actual location. We might say the town that it's in. We won't show any identifying features. So faces will be blurred. Outside of the address will be blurred. No one's going to know that it's specifically you. We're going to change some of the voices if we're talking to you in an interview. Here on Retraced Echoes, I'm probably just going to tell the story. It won't be an interview type for that. And on the investigation side, we'll have cameras rolling the entire time we're there. We'll be documenting exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. And when it's over, we'll put together a file case that we'll hand directly to you and say, hey, here's every single piece of information that we have, all with the scientific explanation at the end. Our goal is to try to document what's actually happening, rule out anything that can be ruled out, and bring some real clarity to the situation. No judgment, no ridicule, just your story, your context, and taking it extremely seriously. Now, to anybody that's still here after my silence since November, thank you. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I didn't forget about this podcast or the show. I was simply building the next phase of it. Now, I'm not back 100%. I'm hoping to be back relatively soon, but I want to make sure that I get everything situated. The device is built. I want to start screening families here in Ohio. I want to start that process. I want to get my prototypes of my devices in the hands of paranormal investigators that I know will also be testing the devices daily. And when I come back 100%, I want to make sure that I'm not telling stories for the sake of just telling stories. We're going to keep the storytelling that you love, but we're also going to raise the bar just a little bit and bring things that you've never heard before. If you want to follow the new channel, well, I'll put it in the description down below. But right now on YouTube, you'd be able to find a channel called Ghost Track. It's got a real cool 90s retro ghost on it. And of course, I'll make sure to make it available to anyone that's listening. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments down below. When Ghost Track drops fully all the way, you're going to see a multitude of different things. And I'll be sure that you guys are right on the forefront. And if you want to stay with Retraced Echoes, the podcast still has home base. Well, you can find it right here on Retraced Echoes, no matter where you're listening to your podcast at. And if you want to keep up with any kind of updates, follow me on Twitter. Just look up Retraced Echoes. Once again, I want to thank you for being here, and I can't wait to talk to you again. And in fact, until I see you again, goodbye.